and he covers sports in this market, man, my whole life. I'm trying to get accustomed to not seeing him on television. That is our own Mark Ibanez, formerly at KTVU Channel 2. And Mark, we've gotten to know each other. You're on the Bay Area Sports Hall of Fame. You've gotten to know Joe Shasky very well. We have conversations off the air, and there's no doubt your love and passion for the Giants. I know you love the Niners. I know you love the Warriors, but the Giants hit different for you. And I know yesterday hit a bit different for you, Mark, when you heard the news about Willie Mays passing away at the age of 93.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. We, I think, all know the definition of heavy heart if you followed this man throughout his career in life and after he was a player. But, I'm telling you, this is not an exaggeration. This sounds like hyperbole. I probably wouldn't be a sportscaster had it not been for Willie Mays. He had that much impact and power in my life. And I'll tell you where it started. I didn't come from a sports-oriented family, guys, and I got tickets to a Giants game just through my paper route. I didn't even want to go. A bunch of paper boys from Santa Fe were all going to go to the game. And literally, I'm there like 15, 20 minutes, kind of bug-eyed, taking it all in. I'd never been to a game before, and I tapped my buddy. I go, Danny, who is that out there? I pointed to center field, and he says, you idiot, that's Willie Mays. And I was just obsessed with the way he moved. Everything he did as a 10-year-old kid captured me. I mean, it just magnetized me, and I became that nerd kid with the transistor radio. And all of a sudden, told my mom, I want to play Little League Baseball. I mean, everything changed like a thunderbolt for me because of Willie Mays, and I followed him and, got to meet him, later in life. And it was just, if I had dreamed that when I was a kid of meeting Willie Mays, becoming friends, going to his house and hanging out with, I just like pinched me, man. And he just, I know he was 93, but it's still tough to accept, especially with the Rickwood game coming up and just all this confluence of circumstances. It's a lot of emotion, Andre.
Man, you're hitting all the notes here because, like I was telling B about my dad, born in 1957, almost the same thing. He would listen on the transistor radio at night in the bedroom. He said the games weren't televised like they are now, and he would visualize before going to bed what was happening on the field, and then every now and then he would go to a game and he would be larger than life. It was like watching a superhero play. What did he mean to the Bay Area in the 60s? I know they didn't win championships or anything like that, and they had just a team of sluggers and personalities, and yet he, at 5'10", stood taller than them all.
Yeah, it's hard to really put into words, and it's kind of like the antithesis of today's Giants with a lack of superstars, in all honesty. The Giants captured a lot of kids, and those kids are now my age and looking back to a golden era, because think of that lineup. I mean, they had Mays, McCovey, Cepeda, and for those who followed closely, later it was Jimmy Ray Hart playing some left field and third base. They had guys, all over the diamond that had a little bit of a swagger, and they just captured your imagination. And like you said, Joe, your dad telling you, we're spoiled now. Every game's on TV. You had to do a lot of this with your imagination when you were a kid, and they became larger than life. And then when you would get to go to like 3 or 4 games a year and see them in person. I mean, if Willie Mays would have walked up to me, you could have knocked me over with a feather. They were superhuman, and it's mind-boggling. If I could tell you just a quick story about how I actually went from following Willie to friendly with Willie, is he used to take batting practice. A lot of people don't know this. When he into his 50s, he would go down to Scottsdale and he'd get in the cage and rip them. And so my first year in Channel 2, getting sent down to Arizona covered spring training, I see Willie, and he's leaning on the batting cage, but he's in street clothes. And I'm like, oh, my God, there's Willie Mays. I got to say something to him. I got to talk to him. And so I'm like, how can I break the ice? And so I kind of tentatively go up to him, and I say, Mr. Mays, you don't take batting practice anymore? And he kind of looked at me and he said, nah, I got the cataracts. And I go, oh, and just spontaneously I said, just like Kitty Cat, huh? And he said, how do you know about Kitty Cat? That was his father's nickname, who played in the Negro Leagues, and he had such lightning-like, cat-like quickness that he got that name, Kitty Cat. And I said, Mr. Mays, I've read everything I can about you. You know, I said, I was at the game where you got your 3,000th hit. Wow. And, you know, he's used to guys coming up and going, you know, blowing sunshine on me. He goes, oh, yeah, you were at that game? And I go, yeah. And he goes, where'd my hit go? And I said, ground ball between third and short. He said, who were we playing? I said, Montreal Expos. And he goes, okay, who was the pitcher? I go, oh, Mr. Mays, I don't remember who the pitcher was. And in that high, shrill voice, he goes, Mark, you should know that. And I was dumbfounded because I said, Mr. Mays, how do you know my name? And he goes, I'm a 49er fan, man. I watch the point after. You know, I watch the 49ers. I'm telling you, for Willie Mays to know my name at that age, you know, in my 20s, I was just, it was too much for me. And, you know, he doesn't suffer fools. He did not suffer, you know, if you didn't know your stuff about him and you were going to come up and, you know, he like tested you all the time because he had a photographic memory. He could remember what pitch he hit, like in 1963 for a ground rule double, you know, and if he gleaned that you were truly a fan and followed it and really knew something about his life, man, you were in. And getting to go to his house, he told me he wanted to take me out to his garage where he had a lot of memorabilia stored. And he's leading the way out to his garage, his home in Atherton. And all of a sudden I stopped dead in my tracks because in the foyer of his house, he had all these beautiful pictures of like him with John F. Kennedy, him with Elvis, the Beatles, Frank Sinatra, you know, like Marilyn Monroe. And he's like, where are you? And I go, I can't get past your lobby, man. I mean, it's just like when you realize the impact that he had on so many people and then to see it in photographs put beautifully framed on his wall, it was just something that I'll never forget. And getting to talk baseball with Willie Mays for a fan, that it's the Shangri-La of it beyond. To say it was a dream come true is an understatement and a half.
That's amazing. Mark Ibanez, you know him from KTVU Channel 2, now retired, but he's still in the scene. He knows everything about the Bay, and of course the Giants was his first love. Mark, did he ever talk about the struggles early on in his career, not necessarily at the plate with the Giants, but in terms of just playing minor league baseball and playing in the South where, you know, it was a different day? We all know about it. Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier, Willie Mays being recognized a few years later, getting picked up by the Giants. Did he ever talk about those times and how tough it was to be a black athlete in this country?
He did not dwell on that, and that is one of the things that I always admired. And I think all the people who know Willie better than I ever did would concur with the fact that he was very well aware was treated, how his teammates were treated, but he was not going to let that define him. He was not going to let that change his perspective on people. In other words, he kind of took people on their individual basis. He was going to generalize white people, black people, you know. And even in my conversation with him briefly about, and he didn't like to, you know, dwell on that. Like when he came to San Francisco, tried to buy a house in a certain neighborhood, and there was a big fuss, and they didn't want him in the neighborhood. He just absolutely on all corners declined to let that change his perspective on life. And of course it bothered him. You know, I'm not trying to, you know, just kind of shine it and say, you know, he went on and he overcame it. No, it bothered him deeply. But at the same time, it wasn't going to change his joy for life and the joy that he had for people. And he was effervescent in that way. He gave off that vibe that he just loved people, and he was very welcoming, particularly if he got to trust you, and knew that you were the real deal.
Mark Ibanez with us, sports luminary here, covering the sports and loving sports in this market his entire life, last 40 years plus. Mark, you love kind of like the obscure facts and details like I do. You're into the weeds, right? No, but that's why I think we get along so well. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm saying, this guy is like the Kevin Bacon or the Forrest Gump of baseball. He's involved in everything. Obviously, 4 years after Jackie, he comes in. He played in the Negro Leagues. 51, they play the Yankees. It's DiMaggio and Mantle in the outfield. And he's the guy who hits the ball where the injury occurs that Yankee fans are still angry about 75 years later. He makes the catch in 54. Obviously serves in the Army. There's so many things that he's done. Greatest player of the 60s, moves west, biggest sports. What's the quirk? What's the thing, the little stat, the nuance? And we've seen all the different stuff. What's something that you always try to tell people, a fun fact or something about his career that really sticks out to you? Because it feels like he accomplished everything, played with everyone, and every one of his contemporaries thinks he's the GOAT.
Well, a couple things. One, the obvious, that think about how many home runs in the prime of his youth that he lost when he served 2 years in the service with the Army. Think about that total. And then think how many home runs he lost at Candlestick when the stadium was first built. It was outrageously deep into left field. But, I easily would have hit, conservatively, he would have passed Babe Ruth. No question. But the thing that always stood out in my mind, and this kind of encapsulates Willie Mays and the type of player he is. I'm talking about baseball player. When I was over with him one time, he was talking, it was right in the middle of the whole Canseco being a 40-40 man. And he looks at me and goes, I could have been 40-40 every year. If I wanted to hit 40 home runs and steal 40 bases, he goes, but that's not always what the team needed to win. I did what the team needed. I didn't look at my stats like everybody seems to now. And it was almost with a jovial added, almost like a joke to him that Canseco was being, paraded around being the first 40-40 guy ever. It was like he was like looking at me like, I could have done that way before this if I put my mind to it, easy, but that wasn't always what the team needed, And think about this. Here's a little nuance for longtime Giant fans that you'll remember. Willie McCovey in his prime, when he won the MVP, Willie McCovey was outrageous, like in 69. I saw Walter Alston, the Dodgers, walk him intentionally to lead off the 10th inning. Like, he put the guy winning around on first because he was that worried about him. But Willie would rake a ball down the left field line, easy double, or into the gap, and he would stop at first base because he knew that if he went to second with first base open, they would just walk Willie McCovey intentionally, and he wanted Willie to have a shot at it. So he didn't care about his stats, racking up 40 doubles in a year or whatever. He did that several times. That's one of those little things. I hate how so many people overuse the word genius in sports, but Willie Mays, when it comes to the game of baseball, it is not hyperbolic to call him a genius. He was 2 steps ahead of everybody at every moment with the tiniest things and the biggest of things. And he truly was a baseball genius in every way, shape, and form. And luckily for all of us, he had the charisma to take it to another level. And can you imagine how many kids, I'm speaking for thousands like myself, who he turned us on to the game of baseball, and by virtue of that, maybe other sports too. He opened my eyes to a whole new world, and I celebrate him on every level. He's outside of my parents. He alone has had the biggest impact on my life. And I know this sounds corny, guys, but I grew up in Marin County in the turbulent 60s, 70s, and there was a lot we were exposed to as young teens and all that. And I swear to you, I had read that Willie Mays didn't drink, smoke, or carouse. And every time I was compromised or put in a position, I swear to you guys, I used to think of that, like, Willie wouldn't do this. Willie, it was ingrained in me that those things. And I will say, without exaggerating, he helped keep me on a good path well before I ever knew him personally, well before.
Wow. And that is induction speech, Willie Mays, as you said, Mark, and that was well said. He loved the game of baseball. Had his induction speech at the Hall of Fame. Say, what can I say? This country is made up of a great many things. You can grow up to be what you want. I chose baseball, and I loved every minute of it. I give you one word, love. It means dedication. You have to sacrifice many things to play baseball. I sacrificed a bad marriage, and I sacrificed a good marriage. But I'm here today because baseball is my number one love. And he always showed that, Mark. He always showed that. So thanks for the words today, man. We appreciate you helping out.
Love you, pal.
Yep, because I know you watched them, and people said it was like watching Ali and Jordan.
Yep, no question about it. It just made such an imprint. I appreciate you letting me express my sentiments. And, my heart is heavy, but I know not long from now it's just going to be the joyful memories and what this man did, not only for me, but just literally millions of people, just impacted them in a positive way. How many people that we ever come across in life can do that? So there you go. Willie Mays. Ironic that he passed in 24 because he is 24 forever.
Wow. Well said, Mark.
What a walk-off.
We'll talk to you soon, brother. Mark Ibanez. Wow.
Legend.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Tipping my cap.
24 on 24. 24 passes away in 24. 2 days before the Rickwood Field game where the Giants will play the Cardinals in Birmingham, Alabama, which will all be about Willie Mays, no doubt about that. And like Stephen Curry, the joy